Welcome back to another episode of Light Beer, Dark Money. This is a special edition. This is our Veterans Day edition. It's Veterans Day now. Obviously, when you hear this or watch it, it will not be Veterans Day. But we have a very special guest with us today. As you can see, if you're watching, Chris is off-site, undisclosed location.
I am in an undisclosed location somewhere in Fort Worth, Texas.
There you go. All right. Well, that's so much not so undisclosed anymore.
With my patented TCU camo hat on, so you can guess from there.
Right.
But welcome.
Yes, and we're really grateful to have Robert Vera here. He was one of our first, maybe your first guest when we started. He is the godfather of our podcast.
Yes, he is.
And
Absolutely.
Hey,
Robert, what do you think of the new jigs?
I love it. It's beautiful. You guys really stepped it up. Yeah, I can see why you left. Yeah, it's really nice.
Well, we couldn't have done it without you, and for that we will always be grateful. Robert was the brainchild of allowing us to start our podcast at Canyon Ventures, and he had the foresight to say, "Hey, let's make this happen," and was really the driver of this thing, because I was kind of like, all right, well, but it all happened because of Robert.
Yeah, you guys were the first podcast we did out of GCU's Canyon Ventures. I loved it, and I think we needed to promote these things. So and it was perfect. It's faith-free markets, you know what I mean? So it was a perfect fit there. So yeah, it's not as the studio was not as nice as this. However, I think
but it was a good starting place.
And look, there were some great guests that came in, and literally, I think it really proved the point.
No question.
So it was awesome having you guys there. But I mean, this is nice. So
can't beat the Star Worldwide networks. Dave Pratt's done a phenomenal job here. Any other podcasts now going?
You guys were the first, and I think the last, right? We haven't figured it out.
One of our last podcasts, we walked in the room where we filmed and recorded, and the media company, Grand Launch, is that? Yeah, they rearranged the room for their own podcast. Yeah, so I'm assuming they're still doing great things there.
They are. So we've reconstituted the building a little bit. So we're going to move our podcast. We have one podcast and you guys need to be guests on this podcast.
Okay.
So the podcast, the working title of it now is Made in Our Dorm Room.
Oh.
So it's going to be about ventures that actually started out in a dorm room.
Okay.
But this is close enough. You started out.
Right. Well, not only did our podcast start out in a dorm room, I mean, you could say for both Chris and I that our political careers started in a dorm room.
Yep.
Oh, absolutely.
So you guys have to be guest on that first podcast.
Happy to do it.
That podcast.
That would be fun.
My political career literally started in a dorm room at George Washington University, doing a summer internship. That was the beginning.
But a lot of things come out of dorm rooms, so I thought it would be a good idea that we, create a podcast or something like this where there's video and we talk about those ideas. Dell Computer came out of a dorm room.
Mm-hmm.
We've got some really interesting things coming out of dorm rooms, right? So we'll create a podcast and show sort of these ideas that have come out of dorm rooms. I'll just share with you one other company that just moved in. He's a GCU graduate and a GCU MBA graduate. Gabe Cooper's his name. This is the goofiest thing, but he's just, I could probably say it. He's signed disclosures, but he was on Shark Tank, and his company is Noggin, like your head, Noggin Boss, and it's the goofiest thing, but it's so brilliant. He literally makes an oversized baseball hat. It's like 20 size the time of a normal baseball hat. So Gabe, whenever he goes to like a Suns game, an Arizona Cardinals game or GCU, he wears these and he's on the Jumbotron all the time, right? So Mark Cuban invested in him, and he's got now a couple of the Sharks have invested in him. So he's moved into Canyon Ventures Innovation Center at GCU, and we'll have a big watch party because his episode is coming up in December.
No kidding.
Yeah, so he's one of our newest additions. But you'll have to do a podcast with him.
Definitely.
And he'll have to bring you guys, light beer, dark money. The problem with that is that when you're wearing it, nothing you say, nobody can take you seriously. So, but yeah, it's an interesting company, but it's perfect for Shark Tank because you don't have to explain it.
Right.
You just walk out and there's this
like,
oversized base.
oh.
Think of Chris Clemens right now wearing a 20 times the size baseball cap with TCU, right?
That is
Advertising is everything, right? So you have a gimmick and you can get noticed, and he can make some money and get some good investors.
Well, and Mark Cuban owning the Mavericks, I mean, he instant recognition of the value.
Yeah, and I think that it was a brilliant move to go on there on Shark Tank because you don't have to explain it, and he needs licenses from NBA, NFL, and those guys have access to that. So that was his I think his main reason to go on there. But yeah, so that's one of our newest ventures. I mean, this is kind of the first GCU undergraduate, GCU MBA who's come home with a company. And so it's exciting to see.
That's very cool.
Yeah, it is cool. It's very cool. It's still weird there. You guys,
we'd fit
right in. By the way, you guys fit in.
I know. Yeah, I know. It was a lot of fun. We appreciate it. It was a great start for us. But here we are on Veterans Day, and we've had you on the podcast, as we said, a long time ago. Feels like a long time ago, but it really was only a few months ago. And you wrote a book. And about Ryan Job, a Navy SEAL. And I thought, and Chris thought, it would be a real honor for us to have you tell us about Ryan, about your book, here on Veterans Day. Now 12 years after he passed, right? Yeah. So I guess the first question, and I highly recommend that everyone. I've been I bought it on Amazon, Audible, whatever. But tell us about the book and tell us about your experience with. I mean, the fact that you only knew this young man for a short amount of time and you called it life-changing, enough to write a book about him. Was pretty remarkable.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate you guys having me here on Veterans Day to honor our veterans. It's a really important cause for me. Like returning veterans, I've still stayed involved 20 years now, almost. I mentor about 25 returning veterans. Still do the work. But Ryan, it's sort of a God thing, right? So one day I got a call from somebody I had not seen in about 20 years. My roommate from college. Said he's coming to Arizona, just got out of the Navy, needed to come see me. I said, okay, flew in, picked him up at the airport, Sky Harbor, and then I had started a company about a year before. So I'd left, I was in financial service business for many years. I'd left, started a company, and this is 2008. I take my friend, Stephen, who came with me. He flew in. I picked him up at the airport. I take him to work with me. I introduce him to a group of folks at the client that we're working with. And after the session, we had a training session. After the training session, one of the women in the session emailed me and said, hey, does your friend Stephen know another guy in the Navy named Ryan Job? And, it's weird, right? Because you don't want to... You blow it, you know what I mean? So it's 320,000 people in the Navy, right? It's like, how many? So I kind of blow it off, and then I say to Stephen, hey, do you happen to know, a couple hours later, do you happen to know a guy named Ryan Job? And he says, yeah, I do. In fact, he was my swim buddy at Bugs. And he said, where is he? And I said, well, apparently you know two people in Arizona, me and Ryan Job. So the next day, we literally went out and met Ryan Job, not too far from here. Literally, we had overpriced coffee at a Starbucks right over there.
Right.
And we sat down with Ryan. He was with his guide dog, Trey. And he told us this amazing, unbelievable story. On August 2nd, 2006, he was on a rooftop in Ramadi, Iraq. He was with SEAL Team 3. Chris Kyle, who is the author of American Sniper, Leif Babin, who wrote Extreme Ownership, Jocko, Johnny Kim. His crew was in Ramadi, South Central Ramadi. Ramadi was really bad at that time. It was probably the most deadly place on the planet. And
so what's interesting about your story is that all those guys become legends.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone he just named are I don't even want to say it, but within the SEAL community are so incredibly revered.
Well, and outside, I mean, you've
and,
got
and outside as well,
mainstream,
they're just
average
amazing
people who,
individuals.
yeah.
Every single one of them. So
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt
Yeah.
from
Just really.
5,000 miles away, but
Yeah. I
it's
mean,
just when you were rattling them off, I just kind of felt like, oh my gosh, that's like the cream of the crop. We were.
yeah, it's an amazing group of guys in that time, and we'll talk more about the books that they've written about. Ryan, I think, is the last count 7 or 8 books, and
Wow.
so 8:30 in the morning, or about 8:30 in the morning, in Ramadi, Ryan's facing east into the sun, and Chris Kyle is on the western side of the roof, and Chris has got his sniper rifle, and he's working the street. The team is working the streets below, clearing houses, and a shot rings out, and Chris knew the report. I talked to Chris extensively afterwards. I mean, we became pretty good friends, and he knew the report. He knew it was a Dragunov, so he knew where it came from. He knew it was a sniper, and he called down the team below. Everyone checked back, okay. He calls over to Ryan, and Ryan slumped over his weapon. And Chris thinks Ryan's screwing around. So he's like, hey, quit screwing around, get up. And Ryan's unresponsive. And then I asked Chris, did you know? And he's like, yep. And I said, do you have any hesitation? He's like, I knew I was going to get one. He's like, but what was I going to do?
Right.
Leave him over there? So he ran across the roof, knowing the sniper was out there, turned Ryan over, and saw that Ryan had it was an egregious wound. I talked to the medic. I mean, his medic and I are good friends, and even Johnny said to me, he's like, yeah, I thought he was dead. So his orbital floor was smashed. The bullet actually Ryan had a 240 Bravo, which is an area weapon. He was on top of the Bravo, but the bullet actually hit the upper receiver, which is the upper part of the weapon, and fragmented into his face. So his head was down, but it fragmented to his face, and it literally took out his right eye, his orbital floor, his cheekbone. Literally, his bone was on the floor. The color of the blood on the roof, I mean, they knew it was arterial. So Johnny came up, Johnny Kim came up, Leif came up, Mark Lee came up, and Chris was already on the roof. The other team below secured the area, and they went to work on Ryan. And Johnny was trying his best. Head wounds are very difficult to treat. If there's physicians listening, they're very difficult to treat. They gauge a head wound on a Glasgow scale. He had the most egregious head wound. He was out cold. They thought he was dead. Johnny was just trying to clamp off the arterial bleeds. Johnny got some bleeding under control. And then, Leif was holding Ryan's hand, literally calling to him, hey, brother, we're going to get you out of here. Hang in there, not knowing if Ryan was going to make it. And Ryan sat up and just coughed up blood. And I asked Ryan, I was like, what'd you do? And he's like, I just looked for my gun. He's like, I knew something happened, but I figured I got to get my gun and get out of here. So Ryan literally, after getting shot, basically looks for his weapon. Mark grabbed his weapon, and Chris tried to pick him up and carry him off the roof. And it was kind of awkward. Ryan was a big guy, and Ryan said, put me down. And Ryan Job literally evacuated himself off the roof into a Bradley vehicle for a ride to Charlie Medical. Johnny Kim was his medic, and me and Johnny talked about that, and he's like, yeah, I'm just sitting there, and Ryan's face is basically gone, and we're having like a normal conversation. He's like, is it bad? And he's like, they'll be able to sew me up. And Johnny's like, but he's like, and he's like, I couldn't pressure treat it, so I just had like a towel wrapped around it. And he's like, we get to the track stops, the hatch drops, and we get to Charlie Medical, and they just swarm us, right? They're just cutting his gear off. They just swarm us. And Johnny's like, I'm standing there. Johnny and Ryan Job went through buds together. They had known each other since Indoc, like the first days, right? They're on the Smurfs boat team together, right? Yeah. And Johnny's like, he
watched Ryan get pulled out of the line and go do the obstacle course.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And he's like, that changed me. He's like, I'm standing there covered in Ryan's blood. And he's like, at that point, I decided I need to do something more with my life. He went back to school. Anyway, let me talk about Johnny for a second. So Johnny Kim becomes a Pat Tillman Scholar, finishes UCSD, gets a math degree there, applies to medical school, gets accepted into Harvard. In 2016, I sent out to Johnny's graduation at Harvard, and he called me. He's like, "Hey, I got to do something more." And I'm like, "Oh, what do you got in mind?" He's like, "You know the astronaut guy you know?" I'm like, "Yeah, Scott Parazinski." He's like, "Yeah, would you introduce me to him?" And I'm like, "Why, Johnny?" Yeah, sure." He's like, I think I want to go to NASA. I want to be an astronaut flight surgeon. And I'm thinking, your parents must be so disappointed, Johnny.
Yeah,
Harvard Medical School, right. Navy SEAL. And so Johnny Kim, if you've seen the latest news, is scheduled for the Mars Atreus mission on, he's now astronaut, Navy SEAL, Dr. Johnny Kim.
Kidding. Wow.
And that was inspired by, and Johnny will tell you that the person in my life who inspired me was Ryan Job.
Yeah.
Ryan was just like that. So anyway, Ryan's telling us this story. I'm just having coffee with him. He's just telling the story like, it's like no big deal, like just got shot. And then what was really awesome about Ryan, so afterwards, I had owned a software company and we did workplace wellness programs. And he's like, "Hey, I hear you own some kind of goofy software company." And when you've done Ironman triathlons, he's like, "I got an opportunity to climb Mount Rainier. You want to train with me?" And I've only known him for like 15 minutes, And so I'm like, well, he must know he's blind. So I was like, sure, let's train together. So that day, that actually began a friendship that lasted the rest of Ryan's life. I mean, it just we would train together all the time. We would. I'd pick him up at his, I knew it would take Ryan like an hour to get ready. So it was hot here in the summer. So I'd pick Ryan up at 4. I knew he was up at 3. Wow. And we would just go train around Squaw Peak, Camelback, North Mountain, Shaw Butte. We'd just go train there for his hike of Rainier. And literally Ryan summited Mount Rainier, was in school at the same time. And, just what was weird about Ryan, and this is why it's hard for me to sort of, I'm sympathetic to people, but knowing Ryan, he made blindness more like an inconvenience, just like, right. And I knew it was humbling. I would have to take him to the bathroom and cut his food. You know what I mean? I never told him I was cutting his food, you know what I mean? Right. But I would cut up his steak, so we'd have to figure it out, right? But we just became really good friends, and it was fun training with him. I thought we were faster together than we were apart. And he was, he called himself Husky.
He was a big guy.
He was a big guy. He was husky, and but he was so much fun to be with. He just such a great attitude, so infectious. I mean, and I think that's why all the SEAL guys loved him, because they gave him a name. And when they give you a name, you're not supposed to like it, right? It's supposed to be like this derogatory thing. His nickname was Biggles. And like the purple desert hippo, they called him, and he embraced it. He got like a purple hippo. He's like, because he knew, if you say you don't like it, they'll just give it to you. But he would sign.
He disarmed him.
Oh yeah, he signed his name Biggles. And I knew he hated it, right? But it was just so, not to give too much of the book away. And I'll just tell you one more story. So one time, Ryan, he was always going to speak at something. So I would just take him to the airport, and I would take Trey, his dog, because we had a big dog, and they would love playing together, and we had a big yard. And so one day, Ryan's like, "Hey, man, can you take me to the airport?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And so I just had to go, so I didn't have a chance to ask him where he was going, So he gets in the car, and I'm like, "Hey, where are you going?" He's like, "Idaho." I'm like, "Oh, what are you doing in Idaho?" He's like, "Elk hunting." And so again, I'm like, this is so weird, right? And I had kind of thought anyway. I'm like, hey, don't tell the other hunters you're blind, right? That may cause some concern. He's like, don't worry, I got it figured out. And how do you like your elk? And I'm like, burgers or chops? I'm like, you surprised me. So 3 days later, he texted me this picture of a massive 900-pound elk that he melted with one shot, just like. But yeah, just an incredible guy. Just just so much fun to there's so much nonsense that happened. His phone would get jacked up, and I'd have to go find him. You know what I mean? And then like he had an incredible sense of direction. Like he lived in not too far from here. So, and all the the first couple times I met him, like everything looks the same.
Yep.
All the complexes look the same. So I'm like, Ryan, I'm at North Site and something. He's like, take a right. and he's like, are you at this? I'm like, yeah. He's like, take a left. So literally the blind guy is giving me direction, right? So it was fun. But to sort of cap the story, and what happened is that, so he was going in to repair for some surgery to repair the wounds. He had he wasn't getting blood flow to the eye, so the skin was it was shriveling up. It was getting weird, and so we needed to get he needed to have blood flow restored. So they were going to harvest a vein and insert it in its orbital floors or his orbital area to get additional blood flow. And he had a vascular surgeon, was all worked out. And Ryan, since I knew him 2 years, right? And Ryan had been probably 4 surgeries in those, a year and a half, 4 surgeries, right? All surgery is major surgery, right? So anyway, so I had some apprehensions about this one, to tell you the truth. Do you really need it? It's been through a lot. You got some things coming up. He's like, yeah, don't worry about it. So I went over, picked up Trey. I would take Trey when he would go into surgery. His wife was finishing up her nurse practitioner or nurse anesthesia degree, so she was studying for boards. So, and she wasn't quite a dog person, right? I'm more of a dog person, right? So I would go pick up Ryan, and he knew I had some apprehension. And I said, hey, man, I love you, brother. Everything's going to be right. He's like, I love you too. And I went and picked him. I took Trey. He went in, called him that night. Surgery had gone well. And but there was always this expectation that when you actually graft a vein or a vessel, that there may be some leakage. And so there was always this expectation that it may work, but we may have to go back in and fix whatever's leaking. So they did an ultrasound. They found out there was some leakage there. So the next day he went back in. The next night, I think he went back in and had that opened up again, and then repaired, just to make sure the vessel was sutured correctly and repaired. So after that surgery, that was the only time that Ryan had told me, yeah, he's hurt. He's like, that was rough. I'm in the hurt right now. And I could tell he was on some paid meds, he was still lucid, but, I could tell he was really hurting. And so I said, all right, I'll come get you tomorrow. I'll bring Trey. And he's like, yeah, and bring me a tin of dip. And so that was at like 10:30 on the 23rd of September 2009. In the morning of 24th of September, his wife, I see her number on my phone. And it's like 4:30 or 5 in the morning, probably close to 5. And my heart, like I can feel it now, like it starts to race because something's wrong. And so I pick up the phone and she's just hysterically crying. And she's just and I said, stand by, I'm on my way. So jump in my car, drive over. Ryan's mom was in town as well, so they're staying there. And so I pick up Ryan's wife and his mom, and we drive to, he was at Maricopa County Medical Center. It wasn't at a VA facility. It was at Maricopa County. And I drive out there. I remember pulling in, and I pull into the lot, and there's the medical staff waiting outside. And my heart just, like, I knew, like, and then now nobody knows but me. His wife is pregnant. So I take now what is a widow with an unborn child and a mom who just lost her son's hands, and I say, we got to go do this, and they didn't know what. And we get in there, and we're in the hallway. They're trying to tell us, hey, we need to go in a room. And they go in a room, and they say, that sometime during the evening, Ryan had passed. They don't have a clear explanation for it. And they're not Ryan and his wife are not really in a place where they can debate or, they're just. So I started asking some questions. They get a little defensive, which piqued my interest.
Yeah.
And so I just started praying. I'm like, hey, God, I've not been here before, but I need some advice right now. And there's like a voice from nowhere said, call your lawyer. So I did. He told me what to do. And I did that. One of the things that happened, and it's all kind of a blur now, but one of the things that happened is that I said to, I was concerned about Ryan's unborn child. So we got a room and we did an ultrasound. And I met Ryan's daughter for the first time in room 5, and he was dead in room 7 on that day. But what happened is a lawsuit. They filed a lawsuit, and if that did not happen, the hospital would have denied any wrongdoing in it. We found out that Ryan had 5 times the amount of fentanyl in his system needed to kill him, and they had overdosed him. Yeah. So obviously there was a settlement, but tragically, that really for a long time, that happened in 2009. Warrior's Faith was published in 2015. There was a lot of there was a lot of soul searching in my world. There was a lot of questions that I had to have answered. I wanted to honor Ryan's legacy of who he was. Since then, Jason Redman's book, The Trident, has mentioned Ryan. Leif and Jocko have mentioned him in Extreme Ownership. A new book I just published, Perfectly Wounded, mentions Ryan Job. There's been 4 or 5 other books that mention Ryan Job, just because he was the type of guy that, like, he was so humble, but he was just so engaging. Is that it was hard not to like Ryan. Yeah. And he made such an impact in people's lives that I thought it was important to honor his legacy, to tell the story straight. I mean, Chris Kyle dedicates American Sniper to Ryan Job, and Mark Lee, who actually was killed on the same day Ryan was wounded, going after the guys that shot Ryan. So I just thought it was really important to set the record straight about what happened to Ryan and tell the story of our friendship. What he meant to me, and then it sort of leads into this broader picture of I think that what can we do as non-veterans for veterans, and because I think a lot of people say, I think the knee-jerk reaction to the challenges in the veteran community is folks always will say, well, what's the VA doing? And I guess I asked myself the question, none of the veterans I know ever raised their right hand and swore an oath to protect and defend the VA. Right. They did it for us. So what and really most of the guys don't want anything. Most of the women guys come back, they really don't want anything. But I think the one thing that can be done is just, you got to think they've been away for sometimes 20 years. They come back to a foreign, you could be a conduit to resources, right? Right. Just a network. So that's more or less what I do. I'm more of a resource. I'm a conduit to ideas, information, resources, and just to I have about 25 veterans. I sort of, we do things together, mentor, whatever you want to call it. But I mean, some of them we go rim to rim to rim in the Grand Canyon. We do stuff like that. Just I think to build trusted relationships, and then it's easier to connect them to the right resources once they know, hey, there's no strings attached, man. It doesn't cost me anything to give you a network. So, but yeah. So the book has done really well. Came out in 2015. New audio version was just released, and was a #1 bestseller for I think 6 months or something like that. But it's done really well. I mean, just the reactions have been. I think for me to get someone to say that book changed my life is really the echo of Ryan Job, right? Yeah. So
well, and it's you think about as Chris mentioned at the beginning, the names you listed off of the people who've written about him that he served with. I mean, he clearly had a huge impact on an untold number of really remarkable people. Yeah. So it's not just that he was remarkable and had impact on people's lives, but he was impacting remarkable people's lives. And it just, your book is phenomenal. I, couldn't endorse it any more than Like, it's just awesome. And I think everyone should read it, in part because it's to honor Ryan, but to understand, who he was, and just use his life as an example of how we can be better in our lives, right? I mean,
a couple of things in the book. I mean, one of the things that happened in the book is that Friday I was supposed to have the book. First of all, to talk about like as a God thing, right? I had never written anything before. By the way, it wasn't like I was like this
author that just came across another story.
I was like, hey, I got another story, right? Never written anything, right? And so I had this idea that I need to take these journalings and I need to put it in a book. And a couple things happened, and this is sort of how God works, right? And someone said, well, you should talk to my agent. So I did. She said, I'm not the right person, but I do know the right person. Talk to this person. That person signed the book, a first-time author, and then I got a book offer from HarperCollins, which is the largest book offer. They own Thomas Nelson, so I got a book offer from Thomas Nelson, to write the first book. So I'm a first-time author, right? So I've written the book. It's 80,000 plus words, whatever they wanted, and so on Friday, now I'm a first-time. I'm like a new guy, right? And I'm a first-time author, and on Friday, the book is due on Friday. On Friday, I called the publisher and I said, hey, can I get the weekend? There's something not right here. I got to make a couple of changes, Can I get the weekend? I just got to fix a few things. And he's like, yeah, no problem. Go ahead. And just, shoot it in Monday morning first thing. We're always going to work on the weekend anyway. So I spend the whole weekend because I know there's something wrong. I just can't figure it out. Finally, it's like Friday night, like maybe even Saturday morning at like 2 a.m. It was really late. I figure it out. I'm trying to convey what it feels like to experience a life cut short, the frustration of it, the loss of it, the profoundness of it, and I need to do that in less words, not more. I need to use the size of the book to convey brevity. And so I go to work and I literally do not sleep. So Monday morning, it's about, I think it was 9 o'clock in Nashville time. I press send at like 9:30. The phone rings and it's the publisher. Hey, just got your revised manuscript. Everything okay? Yeah, sure. Why? Well, it was 80,000 words on Friday, and it's like 40,000 words now. What happened? And I'm like, oh, yeah, I took some things out. And he's like, okay, why? And I said, well, I just told you, look, I think I need to use the physical book, the length of it, the duration of it, the importance of the stories there to convey what it feels to experience a life cut short. So I can't do that with more words. I need to do it with less. And he's like, are you sure? And I was not sure. And I was like, absolutely 100% positive. No question in my mind. I'm sure. He's like, you're sure? Yes. No, I'm not sure. Right. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking this could be a huge disaster. You'll never like this. But I'm like, yes. And I think I may have said something like, God told me to do this. So like when someone says that, like this person's either really, really crazy or God did tell them to do that, right?
Right.
So,
but either way, you're not going to change that.
That's it, right? I'm all in on this one. So he's like, okay, great, thanks. And like 2 days later, the book launched, and like a week later, I saw it was #1. I was like, wow, so I guess it worked, right? Yeah. But I wanted for you to read it in one sitting. Or listen to it in one sitting. I didn't want you to put it down. I didn't want you to I wanted you to experience the shortness of it, because that's the way I felt, and I think everybody felt. It's like you hear this gone too soon, right? But what does that really feel like? And how do you convey that? And I wanted people to get that gone too soon feeling when they read about that. And I think that I think all the other guys who've written about it and known Ryan, we all felt the same way. We didn't expect it. It was such a gut punch. We didn't expect it. And that feeling of gone too soon. There's not a day that goes by that I don't think about Ryan Job.
Yeah.
Not a day. I mean, I am, his brother Aaron is a good friend. He's up in Washington State. I am the godfather of Daniel Ryan Job. Ryan Scott's, I'm his nephew. But there's not a day that goes by I don't think about, Ryan, just who he was and what he meant to me and how he came into my life. And so he's just really an incredible guy, and just really such, for me, that I couldn't think of somebody I would want to honor more in a story to tell about how great I thought he was. And what I loved most about Ryan is he was a great friend. You know what I mean? He was just a great friend. You know the friends that like when you really screw up, they're like they don't even care. You know what I mean? Like he's just a great friend. He was just somebody that was just there. You know what I mean? They don't really care about the other crap. He was just a great friend.
Yeah, and it just, what's so heartbreaking about the story is he goes through just so much, having, had a lifelong dream to be a Navy SEAL, being on the larger side, getting himself there, putting himself through that effort, then being in combat, being shot, and very severely wounded, losing his eyesight, persevering through all of that. I mean, he had lived a valiant life to that point and was destined for great things. And then he gets essentially killed in a hospital bed. Your book did convey that, because for me it was just like, oh my gosh, it's a terrible tragedy.
Yeah, it's stunning.
Whatever you did in that, cutting that 80,000 words down to 40,000, and for a first-time writer, when I first read the book, what you convey is very direct, and it's written in very direct, simple language. And I would, versus like what I most first-time writers, their language is much more flowery and verbose, and that's not your writing at all. It's very, very direct, and I think it hits the reader well, and it conveys exactly what you want it to convey. And I'm wondering, for those who haven't read the book is called A Warrior's Faith. Can you describe, for our listeners and for our viewers, Ryan's faith and the lessons learned in faith?
Yeah, that's a great question, because Ryan never.
Because that is one of our pillars for the podcast, and I don't want that to go by to be missed in this incredible book that you've written.
Yeah, Ryan, he never quoted me like a Bible scripture. I don't even know if he remembered when to quote me one, right? But it was, I think that, to be the hands and feet of Jesus, that's what Ryan wanted to be. That's the type of guy he was, right? It wasn't talk. I tell people, like, Ryan was a do tank, not a think tank. Right. And but he lived his life, in his language, everything was this Christian ideals. He wanted to be, and he lived it. And so he wanted to be the best Christian he could be, right? He wanted to live his faith all in. The one indication he gave me one time is, like, we were in the car one time, and I was like, what kind of music do you want to listen to? He's like, either Christian or country. That was kind of the one indication. Other than that, it was his actions or deeds, right? Everything else was his actions or deeds. He was, he was considerate. He was more thoughtful of other people than himself. I mean, there were people that, I remember we were sitting at his pool one time, and there was this guy. Ryan had sunglasses on, and you could literally, people would ask me, is your friend blind? I was like, dude, he doesn't have an eye. Yeah, he's blind. That's why the dog's here. I mean, you know what? You know what I mean? Yes, but we're sitting by his pool, and this one guy who was there, it was going on and on about his time in the military. I forget, in the Army, whatever it was, what he's done and all this other stuff. And Ryan says, yeah, cool. That's awesome. He's like, what are you going to do now? And he's like, yeah, school, it's great. And I never opened my mouth, because I just wanted to just sit and just take it all in. And we left, and I said, Ryan, why don't you ever say, I'm a veteran, he's like, He's like, why? You know what I mean? Like that, why ruin it? You know what I mean? Like he's like, we encouraged him. I didn't say a word. We encouraged him, and he feels better about himself. Why? Why? It's not a competition.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Why do that? So I think that those are the indications. But Ryan, he's at Scottsdale Bible Church. He would go every Sunday, sit in the same place. Since Ryan's passed, like I meet people that have read the book there at Scottsdale and a Bible Church, and they'll come up to me and like, hey, I didn't know that you were the guy that wrote that, but Ryan was in our small group, or we were in this group together. He really changed my life. So those are the to answer your question, those are the ways that I think Ryan was a great Christian example to live it all in. His language, the way he acted, the way he encouraged people, the way he just wanted to be an encouragement to so many other people. And Ryan, he once told me like he was going to be the best blind guy on the planet, right? And he was, like, literally, it was, I mean, I would forget he was blind. And he was such an encouragement. And then, like, I would climb Mount Rainier. After Ryan passed, we'd go climb Mount Rainier, climb it. And then there were times I literally tried to close my eyes on sections of Rainier, and I couldn't do it. It's too scary. Like, it's just freaks me out. But he, like, literally, just the trust that he had in doing that was incredible.
That's amazing. What an amazing life. And his daughter would be 11 or 12 now.
11 years old now.
That's amazing.
Yep. She was born in April of 2010, so it'll be 11 years old, which, I mean, just, and the people that Chris had mentioned before, like, obviously Chris was a good friend, and that's such a tragedy. I was thinking about that, still friendly with Chris Kyle's father and his mom and Jeff, his brother, and just the other folks that in that whole, I mean, that era, I think during that period of time was a really challenging time for our country. And I think that those guys who are part of that SEAL community, they stepped up to show, this is what America, this is who we are. This is our values. And they've all gone on to do, I think, pretty well. And many of them have continued to honor Ryan and do those things.
Well, A Warrior's Faith, it's on anywhere you get books.
I think that the only place you get books these days is Amazon.
Amazon. I got mine on Audible.
Wherever fine books are sold on Amazon.
And you say there's a new narration that's just been recorded, so that's worth it.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's well worth it because you will be inspired without question. And what a great way to honor our veterans here on Veterans Day or whenever you're listening to this. But to honor Ryan and his legacy. And man, we could listen to you for hours. We thank you for being here to talk about him.
It's great to be here. And, it's a great Arizona story too. Ryan was here with us. He was, he's inspired. There's someone who knew about what happened to Ryan was here. They set up a Ryan Job Scholarship Fund for the University of Washington where he went to school. So, but yeah, it's a great story. Some of the landmarks in the book you'll recognize as Arizona, but I really appreciate both you guys, Chris. You guys are.
No, we appreciate you, Robert.
Yeah.
I mean, you like Sean said earlier, you helped us get going, and we missed our digs over at GCU, but we incubated there, right?
Yeah.
That was the whole point.
As we said in the first podcast here, we hatched and flew away.
Yeah, we're an incubator. That's what we do, right? Well, thank you guys.
And Sean said it well too. This was kind of your idea, and so we're to be able to share the story of Ryan Joe with our listenership more in depth, more in detail, especially when I was listening to you, I was wondering what Ryan would think about the things that are happening today. With our veterans community and the challenges we're going to have going forward with what has happened in Afghanistan, what continues to happen in the Middle East, and the engagements that we're going to have in the future because of decisions made or not made, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Robert, thank you again for being here. Follow us on Instagram at Light Beer Dark Money, on Twitter, on Facebook, and we'll link in to get the book So look for that, and have a great day, everyone. Have a great. It's not Veterans Day when you're listening to this, but we'll have a great Veterans Day, honoring Ryan and other veterans. And God bless. Thanks for being here.
Thanks.